Hello, everyone. Welcome to Buddhist Center. It's Thursday night, and we get to talk about Lama Tsongkhapa's source of all my good, foundation of all good qualities. And any day that we can do that is a very special day. There's so many beings that don't have any of those special days, and we keep having them over and over again. So we're among the very, very lucky ones who have this life of leisure that Lama Tsongkhapa talks about in this wonderful poem. And that we find in the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment when we look at the human life of leisure. And then in the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, it talks about opportunity as well. But we can't be certain about all of the opportunities because there can be some debate about the outer opportunities when we look at those 10 special qualities of a life that beings have had. But when we look at the 8 leisures and we look at the presentation and see how we have this human basis, we're in a place where the Dharma is. We have all the causes and conditions necessary to practice. We don't have too much suffering that makes it impossible to practice, but we have enough suffering to know that we really have to practice. And it becomes more and more clear to us as time goes on and as we study more that, hey, what the Buddha said is really accurate in terms of the truth of suffering. So it's so great that we have a way out of what the Buddha presented to us as kind of an awful situation that we're in, and an even awfuler situation that we're in than we ever could have imagined once we start to study it more and more and more. And luckily, because of the Buddha's kindness and because of the Buddha's wisdom, having arrived at a place of reliability, having arrived at perfection, and arriving there through love and compassion, came back to show us exactly how to get out of our situation, how to get out of our kind of mess that we're in, that awful state of the truths of suffering that we have to endure, that we can get rid of, just like the Buddha got rid of them. And Buddha was so kind to come and show us exactly what the origin of suffering is, so that we know that if something has an origin, has a cause of it, then if we can somehow get rid of that cause of it, of the problem, then the problem will go away. And the Buddha was so kind to come and teach us the first and second noble truth, to show us that relationship, that cause and effect relationship of how suffering is created, and how we're bound to cyclic existence, and then so kind to show us how to be freed from cyclic existence, how to be unbound through the second sets of noble truths, the truth of cessation and truth of path, saying, okay, here, this is how you're bound to cyclic existence, this awful thing that you're having to experience because you have contaminated karmas and afflictions in their seeds. Here's this. And here's what causes this. This is how you're bound to this problem. And then the Buddha said, this is the truth of cessation and this is the truth of path, and showed us how to be unbound from it, how to be freed from it. Said that there's an antidote that's very specific, that if we apply it, it's called the truth of path. If we apply it and put it as an opponent up against the truth of origin, that then we could get rid of what the origin brings about, and that's the truth of suffering, and then achieve that third noble truth of cessation, that complete abandonment of that which gives rise to suffering forever. And if we only have the cause of happiness within our continuum, and that's what, from moment to moment creates our experiences, then we'll only have happiness. And the only way we can have the highest amount of happiness is by practicing the Bodhisattva path, which is in union or united with that wisdom that one realizes even at the lower paths, where you would only, be able to, without the bodhicitta or without being a bodhisattva, achieve an abiding nirvana. But if you add the bodhisattva path to that same exact wisdom that we have to realize in the lower paths to achieve an abiding nirvana, then we're able to achieve a complete 100% happiness and bliss. And the reason that we can achieve that is because we've not only gotten rid of the afflictive obstructions and the coarse self-cherishing attitude, but we've also gotten rid of the stains of it that are left over through the bodhisattva path, which are called the cognitive obscurations or the obstructions to omniscience. And those obstructions to omniscience are kind of the leftover stains or the imprints that are kind of from the gross self-cherishing and the grasping at the I and phenomena as being truly established. And once those are removed, we achieve the state of complete Buddhahood. And the state of complete Buddhahood has some very wonderful factors that come along with it. You have perfect wisdom, perfect love, perfect compassion, perfect skillful means, and perfect bliss. And that perfect bliss is something that is achievable by anyone listening to this who has a mental consciousness. So that special bliss, that omniscience that then has so much love imbued with it simultaneously that it must send out bodies to help all sentient beings. And that's what the Buddha is. The Buddha is a being who, because of the Bodhisattva path, has a mind that forces bodies of the enjoyment body and the emanation body to be produced for the sake of all sentient beings, because the Bodhisattva is only doing his or her work on the 5 paths and 10 grounds for one specific purpose, and that's to become the most reliable guide in the universe. That's to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, and not having any bias whatsoever, and recognizing that the only way through the Bodhisattva path to achieve perfection is to put others' needs before one's own. And by recognizing that, the Buddha never ever stops emanating bodies until all sentient beings achieve that state of fearlessness and bliss through removing the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. So that's our job. It's only the job that we can do on ourselves. It isn't a job that someone can do for us. The gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas who we imagine and we pray to intervene in our lives and teach us and give us exactly what we need at whatever moment when we need it to be able to move closer to that state of fearlessness and infinite happiness or bliss. But the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas can't do it for us. So it's an internal job. It's an operation that we have to do on ourselves. But luckily, it's an operation that we're taught very well how to do by, these great masters, by the great Tibetan masters and Nalanda Pandits and back to Buddha Shakyamuni, who's shown us exactly how to operate on ourselves, and not in a way that could ever go wrong if we're following the instructions to a T. And normal operations you do in the normal worldly sense don't always come out okay. But if you do the operation on your mind the way that the Buddha has presented it to us, and we have an unerring way to go about it, we don't have any partial instructions on the operation, we have full instructions, and we follow them to a T, then what will happen is we'll attain an awakened state. We'll wake up. So normally you would be under anesthesia. This is actually making you wake up more while you're doing this operation on yourself without anesthesia. But unfortunately, it will hurt at times, just like any kind of change that has to take place mentally or physically if it's not something you're accustomed to. And we know that since beginningless time, we've had this incorrect way of perceiving things. So when we start to go against the grain of how we would normally act and react, it becomes uncomfortable. And when we start to try to combat something within us called the self-cherishing attitude, a self-centered kind of attitude, it's something that we believe in our core is what makes us okay. We have to take care of ourselves, this kind of Darwin idea that all of these emotions are for protection and that we need them and that they are going to do us good in some way. So we have to go against what even very, very, genius type people come up with in terms of how they think one can or cannot change his or her mind. And we see so many, great psychologists and psychiatrists over the years and writers have said that we really only can reach a certain point of development with this mind because we have these instincts. And the Buddha said that, no, we have these habituations that are instincts, if you want to call them that, but they aren't something that inherently exist within us. They can be removed, but the only way they can be removed is by like dehabituation, if that makes sense. We've been habituated since beginning with time with these kind of states of mind that are completely incorrect, that make wrong decisions, that always lead us into more and more trouble. But we believe them so much to be true, it's all we've ever done. And it's all we really can seem to believe. And some of the greatest thinkers of all time have concluded that there really isn't a way for us to combat it at its final point, combat the self-cherishing attitude, combat attachment, combat hatred, combat anger, combat pride, combat, all of these things that are so hard for us to get rid of. The Buddha says we can. The Buddha says these other thinkers weren't thinking broadly enough. They weren't applying enough antidotes. And if you apply enough antidotes, then because these mental states are caused, if you make them not caused, they can't occur. So it's not something that innately exists there. It's something that has to be combated and removed. And once it's removed, if that which gives rise to it is removed, it will be removed always. So it's something that we can lessen more and more and more by applying antidotes, the coarser antidotes, but really that final antidote, which will serve to get rid of all of the negativities, is the understanding of the ultimate truth, of the lack of true establishment of all phenomena, and being able to conventionally designate them subjectively through bringing them into the world, through naming a collection of parts that serve as suitable basis of designation, and believing, yes, all of these things exist around me. There is externality. There are things that exist out there in terms of external things, but those things aren't even called things until I call them things. and they aren't things with any ness till I give it to them. Until I subjectively, through my imprints and through so many different causes and conditions and factors, adhere to these things from a conscious perspective, adhere to them as having some sort of objective, final reality. And it's the loosening of that, and the loosening of that in respect to externality, in respect to myself, of person, and then everything else. So as soon as you start to loosen the grip on this self of person, and start to loosen the grip on this is mine, and start to see that all of these things are coming into being in a way that I never even thought of they could have come into being before. When you start to see that, and then you start to recognize how that relates to our actions and reactions, and how that relates to everyone else's actions and reactions, we can start to act and react to other people's actions and reactions in a more realistic way. And that's where we begin to be able to combat these things which seem so instinctual, these things like anger that just suddenly come up. And they feel like they come out of nowhere, but they're not coming out of nowhere. They're coming through a very specific process of our mind that's taking place at a very, very subtle level that may not seem so apparent. But great yogis are able to slow their minds down enough to be able to see the whole process that's going on of coming into contact with things and paying attention to them and then discriminating them. And at that point of discrimination, if you're seeing them as truly fixed, objectively good, objectively bad, and then it's creating some kind of a feeling for you at that point. And then that's where it all kind of starts, at that feeling. And then you have an intention in your mind that says, I don't want this, or I want that, I have to have that. And it's the unwinding of that in a slow way, and the using of suppressive methods to get rid of some of our more coarse negativities of our mind that will allow us to balance it out, and then eventually get to the state of Buddhahood, where not only do we know better, when we look at the here solitary realizers, they know better, but when they are dealing with conventional truth, it still appears to have objective existence, but they know better. Buddha is able to simultaneously perceive conventional and ultimate truth. The Buddha sees things the way that they really are, and is able to see things as they're concealed in their concealed way simultaneously. And it's the only being in the universe who can simultaneously see the concealed, the object that's concealing, and see the ultimate truth that it is concealing at the same time, without being kind of having to take a moment to say, no, I don't believe this. There isn't that break in convention when they're dealing with conventional truth. And that's why they're the most reliable guides in the universe, because they see everything exactly as it is. And their mind, because of having that pure altruism, just can move so freely. It doesn't have any, it's not bound. There's something to do with the self-cherishing attitude that makes the mind so small, that doesn't allow it to penetrate everything. It makes it so confined. And that's what we have to combat through meditations on love and compassion and so forth. But we will only be able to get rid of the gross and the subtle self-cherishing attitude really with a liberating path. And that liberating path has to be combined, I understand, with renunciation and bodhicitta and love and compassion and all of these different 6 perfections and so forth. But that wisdom has to be there. Without that wisdom there, it doesn't matter how much love and compassion we have. It won't create, Buddhahood won't create a hero or solitary realizer's nirvana. So that was a long introduction, but let's get into the 7-point Vairocana posture, because we want to have all that good stuff I just talked about happen. We want to start to loosen our grip on the way things appear to us and loosen our grip on our way that we mentally react to stimuli. And the only way we can do that is to start to slow our mind. This is what yogis have done. They've slowed their minds down enough to be able to say, wow, how should I react to this situation? Whatever it is in life, whether it's something you want or someone coming at you that's very angry and yelling, a yogi can somehow slow that whole thing down because of the conditioning of his or her mind that we're trying to do here. And if that slowing down can happen, and then the less reacting can happen, and then less non-virtue happens, and more virtue happens, we know that the only way that Buddhahood is created is by enormous collections of merit, enormous collections of virtue, and by extinguishing all of the non-virtue. So we have to get rid of all of the non-virtue, and we have to stop behaving in ways that are non-virtuous. But I mean, that sounds good, but without having a correct view, without having a way to really analyze our way out of some of the destructive thinking, without having a way to analyze our way out of turning, because we already analyze our way into more anger. We have the inappropriate mental conduct, that we give ourselves all these reasons why this person really has jerkness and I really don't like them. And they did this. I remember 10 years ago, they did this, and that inappropriate. So we are able to analyze ourselves into more anger. So this is a different thing. We're just analyzing ourselves into more love. So it's really interesting how we're so comfortable with analyzing ourselves into more attachment, looking up what the best thing is on the internet and how to get it and so forth, and becoming more and more enthralled with these things. We're so used to using analytical kind of wisdom to get to non-virtue, to get to afflictions, if you will. We can analyze ourselves and not just to get to afflictions, because sometimes it just kind of goes like 0 to 100 with afflictions. But once we're in the moment of the first moment of that affliction, like, that, or whoa, that, when we're in that first moment, we can make a decision. Are we going to have mental conduct now that's going to make myself more attached or more angry? Or am I going to do something at that moment that will diffuse the situation where I won't become attached, diffuse the situation where I won't become completely angry? Maybe just that moment, and then I firmly face and avert it, like it says in the 8 verses for training the mind. So this is why we're doing all of this. This is why I'm talking away, and we're sitting in every class. We're doing this merit field visualization because we're trying to pound away at this wrong idea and collect the virtue that we need to. And it takes so much familiarization over and over and over again with these things and leaving these imprints in our mind to know these pandits' names and to know how to meditate on the merit field and to understand why we need to connect with all sentient beings. The more we habituate our minds with it, the more it becomes what our minds are. And that's what we saw in Khensur Geshe Wangdak. We saw someone whose mind was the teaching, whose mind was just a manifestation of everything you saw on the paper. And it was something that was so appealing to me. You see the Dalai Lama as a manifestation of the words of the Lam Rim on the paper, just the manifestation of all those qualities. And if we want to be the manifestations of those qualities, then we have to manifest them. It isn't something that just happens. It's, not, there are little blessings that we can get. I get it. There's some very hidden stuff out there that none of us get. And gurus can do some pretty wild stuff. And they have some power that kind of operates, outside of the realm of normalcy. But counting on that, really, as Geshe Dorje Damdu says, if, you're in a dark room, you should, don't pray to Buddha, go turn the light on. If you're hungry, don't pray to Buddha and say, please feed me. Go in the kitchen and cook yourself something. But, there are these other parts that aren't so manifest that, we can also rely upon if we have faith. But that faith shouldn't be just kind of founded in blind faith. It should be founded in, okay, so all of these other things that are presented are so clean and so pure. And there are this other part that seems a little kind of secret, abstract, that I can't even figure out, and I have to rely upon someone's word for. We have to get to a place where we are relying on somebody's word for something because they've told us so much other stuff that we've analyzed and come to the conclusion that through using correct signs, all that's correct. And I couldn't have known that was correct without really analyzing it. We don't always have to just rely on somebody's words for hidden phenomena, but very hidden phenomena we do. But the only way we can have any kind of faith in that kind of stuff, like these realms that, we have to just believe in, and, how many beings more there are here than there are there, and how exactly at this moment, my skin pigmentation is this here and this here and this here, what caused that and what caused this. Only the Buddha really could know something like that and be omniscient to know. But we can get to the bottom of most of this stuff on our own. And if we want to get to the bottom of it, we have to do what the great masters did to get to the bottom of it. So 7-point Vairocana posture, and we're going to get ourselves down to a nice calm state. We set our motivations already a little bit, talking about getting rid of the afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience. That's our goal. That's always our goal. It's a Mahayana goal, great vehicle goal. No reason to have any other goal than that, because we're at a time when we presented with the Mahayana, and we're so fortunate. So we're going to breathe in and out through our nose while we're in the 7-point Vairocana posture. Breathe in all the way, filling the lungs and the diaphragm, and then gently turning your breath around and exhaling and counting 1. We're going to add another external kind of focal object that's about an arm length away, a head height, eye height, about 2 inches or so tall. And we're just going to imagine Buddha Shakyamuni in the front generation appearance. So beautiful, so radiant, but very static. Because we're doing fixed meditation, we want to have the object of observation be a static object of observation and stay on that focal object. Our mindfulness is making sure that we're staying on the focal object. Focal object is breathing in and out, counting the breath, and the front generation form of Buddha Shakyamuni. So this is going to be our focal object. Our mindfulness is going to hold on to. The spy of introspection in the mind is going to be checking to make sure that we don't have any excitement or distraction or scattering, anything that's going on, wandering of our mind. And if it is, we're going to have mindfulness bring it right back to the focal object of the breathing in and out and the counting and the front generation form of Buddha Shakyamuni. And we're going to make sure also that our mind doesn't have any sleepiness or dullness, any kind of like getting darker. It's getting sleepier and sleepier. Sometimes when we're counting the breath, it can almost hypnotize us. We're going to make sure our introspection is guarding against this kind of dullness. and also this excitedness, because we have to have our mind to be very, very stable, like a rock, like very, very like a diamond, stable. And we also have to have it very, very clear, and illuminated. So we want the object of our meditation to be very, very steady and very, very clear. So that's it. So right now, we're going to focus on the breathing in and out and the counting and the front generation form of Buddha Shakyamuni, and then we'll go from there. We're so fortunate to have Buddha Shakyamuni's teachings in our world, to have the Nalanda Pandits have come. All the great Tibetan masters, we're so fortunate that we've had access to the various turnings of the wheel of Dharma. We're so fortunate we've met with Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings, Lord Atisha's teachings. We understand the teachings shared in common with beings of small capacity, the teachings shared in common with beings of medium capacity, and the teachings for beings of great capacity. Rejoice in the fact that we have this human basis. We have all of the causes and conditions that we need in order to get rid of the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. We all have Buddha nature. We all have a mind that has this potential, this potential to mature into a state of perfection, just like Buddha Shakyamuni matured his mind into the state of perfection. Our mind is empty of inherent existence, just like the Buddha's mind is empty of inherent existence. And it's the fact that our mind is empty of inherent existence that we can say that we can remove the defilements that are adventitious. They aren't fixed. They aren't part of its nature. The mind is in the nature of clear light and unsullied. We will all become Buddhas, just like Buddha Shakyamuni. Now imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni, who's in the space in front of you, becomes very animated, so happy, so encouraged to see that you're here tonight in order to learn more about the Bodhisattva path, in order to learn more about the teachings for beings of three capacities, because it's those teachings that will allow each and every one of us to become a Buddha and get rid of the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. Imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni has been containing the entire merit field. Now imagine like fireworks, the whole entire merit field is now in the space in front of you. Imagining Buddha Shakyamuni, imagining His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Khensur Geshe Wangdak, we were so connected to. Oh, we're so fortunate to meet with an Arya Bodhisattva named Khensur Geshe Wangdak. He's smiling and so happy we're continuing the teachings. All Rinpoche wanted us to do is continue our studies, and we're continuing our studies. I feel so fortunate to be able to carry on the Lamrim tradition that he asked me to carry on. Rejoice in the fact that we're all part of that. Khensur Geshe Wangdak is so happy imagining Geshe Lobsang Gompo, Ken Rinpoche Lobsang Yatso, remembering Dema Locha Rinpoche. We're so fortunate these beings are in our world. And Geshe Dorje Damdu and Umzila Geshe Aga and Geshe Mala Tenzin Ladrin and Jeffrey Hopkins, Anila Tupten Chodron, Charo Rinpoche, all these incredibly holy beings, Genpal Drapa Rinpoche in our world. We're so fortunate. We can connect with these teachers. We've connected with these teachers. Just imagine them so happy in the space in front of us. Now imagine the beings of the extensive deeds lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni and Maitreya and Asanga and Vasubandhu and Dharmakirti and Dignaga and Vimuktasena and Haribhadra and Shakyaprabha and Gunaprabha, imagining Lama Salimpa and Atisha. We're so fortunate to have connected with these teachings on grounds and paths and logic, understanding of the Vinaya, understanding of the Abhisama Alamkara, the understanding of the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment. Rinpoche was so kind to teach us. Maitreya was so kind to bring us a Sangha and give him those ornaments and those compendiums of teachings. We're so fortunate that a Sangha spent those 12 years in the cave and didn't give up and eventually met with Maitreya to be able to bring this lineage to us. It's amazing that we're in this world. It's amazing that we met with Khensur Geshe Wangdak and His Holiness the Dalai Lama and all these incredible masters who have shown us these teachings. Now imagine the beings of the profound view lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Manjushri and Nagarjuna and Buddha Palita and Aryadeva and Chandrakirti and Shantideva, imagining Baba Vega and Chandrashita and Kamalashila, all of these holy beings in the space in front of you, that incredible Madhyamika lineage, and especially the lineage of the Madhyamika Prasangika that was just shined so brightly by Nagarjuna and Chandrakirti and Buddha Palita and Aryadeva and Shantideva, shines so brightly. We're so fortunate to have the Madhyamika Avatara and the Mulya Madhyamika Karika and Shantideva's Bodhichara Avatar in that beautiful 9th chapter to understand the nature of reality. We're so fortunate to have connected with these teachings because of our holy gurus. All these gurus and Buddhists and Bodhisattvas are in this space, imagining the beings of the lineage of blessings passed down. Lord Vajradhara there, and Saraha, and Matripa, and Tulopa, and Naropa, and Lotsao Amarpa, and Milarepa, and Gampopa. We're so fortunate to have the Lamrim tradition passed down from Gampopa, and then passed down in so many different ways through Drone Tompa. So amazing that Lord Atisha passed the Lamrim lineage to Drone Tompa, and he held the entire lineage of teachings and the 3 Kadampa lineages, and then all of the beings of the Nyingma Sakya and Galup order of Tibetan Buddhism. We're so fortunate. Padmasambhava came, the Sayit Sulakon, and Sakya Pandita and the Karmapas and Lama Tsongkhapa. We're so fortunate. Lama Tsongkhapa and Kirtip J and Jelsip J, Basu Chuji Jetson and Jayan Sheba, all these incredible pandits, Penchen Sanandrapa, Janja Rupi Dorje, Gonchu Jimmy Wampo, the 7th Dalai Lama. We're so fortunate these incredible masters passed down from the Lama Lozandrapa, Dorje Chung. We're so fortunate that Lama Tsongkhapa came into our world and had so many disciples and passed down such a pure lineage. He put in so much effort. Lama Tsongkhapa used to carry around so many books, did so many retreats, made so many prostrations, just to try to get to that final nature of reality, to be able to achieve that illusory body at the time of death. So fortunate that a being like that walked on our earth and presented these teachings. Imagining all of the deities, the highest yoga tantra, yogic tantra, performance tantra, action tantra, all the 35 Buddhas. We're so lucky. We can just say some Buddha's names and get rid of eons of non-virtue. We can just apply the 4 opponent powers to our non-virtues because of these holy beings, and even the 5 heinous crimes can be gotten rid of. We can use these 35 Buddhas and the power of an antidote in the 4 opponent powers, and it has so much power of purification. We're so fortunate to have met with these teachings, heard of this commentary, and we know the 1,000 Buddhas will come, only a few of them will teach Tantrayana. We're so fortunate to have been blessed with all of these initiations and so forth and all the classes of Tantra. We have these protector deities of the small scope Vaishravana and the medium scope Dharmapala and the great scope Mahakala and Palden Lamo here to protect us. Khensur Geshe Wangdak told us that Palden Lamo is our protector deity. Drepung Losalingo Kamsen, protector deity Palden Lamo is here to protect us. We're so fortunate. Now, we recognize that like we want to have happiness, 100% happiness, All sentient beings want to have 100% happiness, and our importance is no more weighty than the importance of others. We can't say when we look at all of the billions of human beings that if we place them all around us, that we could say we're more important than those billions of human beings. We're equally important. We equally feel pain. We equally want happiness. We recognize that so many of these sentient beings that we're so close to right now, we've had so many different relationships with, and beings that we're not close to right now, and beings that we even consider enemies, were so kind to us in our previous lives. We've had every single relationship with every being we could ever imagine, and every single sentient being has been our mother and been so kind to us. We try to remember this kindness. And we know that they're in a position of suffering, just like we're in a position of suffering, with the 8 types of suffering, the 6 types of suffering, and the 3 types of suffering. We know that they have this grasping at the I and phenomena as being truly established that gives rise to all of their problems, like it gives rise to all of our problems. And since they're equally important as we are, and we recognize that the Buddha told us that we have to generate love and compassion that turns into this incredible attitude that puts others' needs before our own in order to become fully enlightened, in order to become the most reliable guide in the universe, in order to get rid of the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. And we know that once we get to the point in the 7-point cause and effect where we generate love through the force of attraction and then generate great compassion, that we get this extraordinary attitude where we say, I'll take it upon myself, the task of freeing each and every single sentient being from suffering, because they've been so kind to me, because they've had every relationship with me, because they're equally important, because cherishing myself has so many downfalls and cherishing them has so many positive qualities. We say, I'm going to take it upon myself to bring sentient beings to a state of happiness where there's only causes of happiness, and to a state where there's freedom from suffering and there's never any suffering, there's never any causes of suffering. And we know right now that we're not in a position to really take care of all sentient beings. Only the Buddhas are. Only the Buddhas are the most reliable guide in the universe. Only the Buddhas are beings that all sentient beings should run towards for refuge. Rinpoche always gave this incredible analogy. He would say that when there's a little child, even a small dog could run up to it and scare it. And then he or she would run to their parents to try to be protected from this fear. They would go for refuge to their parents to be protected. Even if it's this little dog that really couldn't do much, they run to their parents. And their parents are a worthy being to run towards. Why? Because their parents love the small child so much that they will get rid of the dog. They're not going to try to do something to hurt the child. They love the child so much. They want the child to be free from suffering so much. They will shoo the dog away. They're going to get rid of the fear for the child. The child is making a good investment in terms of who he or she is going for refuge towards, because this person loves them so much that they'll get rid of the dog. And then this child is making a good decision because he or she is running towards a large person who's much larger than them, who can surely get rid of this little tiny dog. So likewise, we have to run towards a being who has complete, perfect love, perfect compassion for us. They won't trick us or misguide us in any way. And also the ability to free us, because a Buddha is the only being with the perfect wisdom and omniscience, perfect love, perfect compassion, perfect power, and perfect skillful means. This is the only being who has these qualities. This is the only being who can truly help all sentient beings. So we recognize, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. We say this to ourselves because we want to become the most reliable guide. We want to be able to help every single being that exists. And then we start to think about what kind of beings exist and how could we help them now? What could we do for them now? What could we stamp in our minds which would be like what a Buddha would do? What would a Buddha do? A Buddha would want these beings that are all been our mothers, have all been his or her mother, to have happiness and the causes of happiness. And the only way for them to have that is to be able to hear the teachings. So we can, even if it's in a contrived way, imagine that we have the ability to bring all of these teachings to all sentient beings. Imagine that we have this perfect power, this perfect skillful means. Imagine that we have it now, and then eventually it will be a cause for us actually having those qualities. We're stamping in our mind, we want these qualities. We want to have these qualities. So we begin to think about all sentient beings, start to think about the hell beings, the hungry ghost beings, the animal beings, all those beings in the lower realms, the teachings that are shared in common with beings of small capacity that show us how to be free from those horrible states of suffering of hell, hungry ghost, and animal. And we imagine that we bring all of those beings here right now, the 8 hot hells, the 8 cold hells, the surrounding hells, all of those beings who are tortured in so many different ways. We bring them here. The hungry ghosts who are tortured in so many ways, we bring them here. The animals who we can see with our own eyes and we can hear with our ears at night, sometimes the moaning of animals who are suffering because they're being eaten alive. We imagine that that suffering, it just stops for just long enough for them to hear this teaching, to be able to transform their minds into a state and be ejected from those lower realms of cyclic existence and be able to attain a human rebirth with the 8 leisures. This birth that we have right now that we're so fortunate to have, sometimes we take for granted so much, and we don't practice, we don't study, we think that we have so much more time than we do. But imagine if we're in these lower realms and we won't have a moment to study or think about the Dharma. Imagining that we're bringing all of these beings here. And we're giving them that space. We're giving them that time to be able to hear the Dharma, to hear what will allow them to have fearlessness and then eventually an infinite happiness. Now imagine we bring all human beings here. We don't have any bias. We've already gone through the formulas. We've recognized that all sentient beings have had every relationship with me. I'm equally willing to benefit all of you. I have this open mind that I'm equally willing to benefit all of you. Imagine all human beings are brought here. All demigods are brought here. All the sufferings of jealousy and so forth, and the fighting and everything that goes on in their minds because they don't have all of the desirous things of the higher gods. Imagine all of that just stops for a minute. The higher gods and their addiction to sensual pleasure stops for a minute. Imagine the beings who are even in the higher realms of the form realm, where they don't even have the suffering of suffering. They only have the suffering of change and pervasive compounded suffering. They're so addicted to their internal meditation. Imagine that those beings are brought here and they understand that they aren't done. They understand that they're not in a state of nirvana. They understand that their concentration is limited. Imagine that they're all brought here. And the beings in the higher form realm and formless realms where there's only pervasive compounded suffering. Imagine that they understand this just for a moment, that they aren't done, that they will have to be forced into a new set of aggregates. Even though they only have 4 at this time, they're going to have to be forced into a new set of aggregates, and they'll probably have 5, and it'll probably be in the lower realms because there's only been suppression going on. So now imagine that now that all beings are here, we've brought everyone. We've left none out. We've connected to every single sentient being in the universe. Hell, hungry ghost, animal, human, demigods, gods. We've brought all of them in order for us to connect our minds to every being in the universe, because the Buddha's omniscience connects to every being in the universe. And now we're planting seeds that are going to eventually manifest into that completely ripened state of fully enlightened Buddhahood. So now the entire merit field is so full of bliss, so full of happiness, because all sentient beings are here. The only thing the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas want is for us to engage in pathways of the teaching shared in common with beings of small capacity, teaching shared in common with beings of medium capacity, and the teachings for beings of great capacity. That's all the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas want for us to do. And we're doing exactly what they want us to do. We're doing exactly what Khensur Geshe Wangdak asked us to do. And they're just so full of bliss and so happy that this is going on. And now, with this joy in your heart, because you see these beings that you find to be so reliable, that you take refuge in, that you bow at the feet of, you see them so pleased with you and so happy, rejoice in the fact that you're doing this. Rejoice in the fact that you're doing something that's so amazing. And let's set our motivation a little bit further before we read the Heart Sutra with reading the prologue of Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment. So this is the very, very beginning of Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stages of the path. Homage to the Guru, Manjughosha. So we know Lama Tsongkhapa had a teacher-student relationship with Manjushri, and when Lama Tsongkhapa had thought he had gotten to the final view of emptiness, he had Lama Umapa as a go-between, and then eventually didn't use the go-between, but he said to Manjushri, do I have the view? And Manjushri said, no, you don't, but you're close. You will get there. You don't have the view that you think you have. And this was after so much study, so much not being satisfied with partial instruction, so much meditation, so much accumulating merit. And Manjushri was so kind to Lama Tsongkhapa to say, you're going too soon. You just need to rely upon the teacher who's inseparable from the guru, make petitions to the teacher who's inseparable from the yidam, accumulate merit, purify non-virtue, and achieve more wisdom arisen from hearing, analysis, and meditation in relation to the Nalanda Pandits. And then he had that incredible vision of Buddha Palita. He had that breakthrough moment and saw emptiness. And then he wrote in praise of dependent origination, praise of Buddha Shakyamuni for teaching dependent origination. We're so fortunate that we've heard this. We know about this. It's amazing. Homage to Guru Manjughosha. I bow my head to the chief of the Shakyas, whose body was formed by 10 million perfect virtues, whose speech fulfills the hopes of limitless beings, whose mind sees precisely all objects of knowledge. I bow down to Maitreya and Manjughosha. It says Ajita, but that's Maitreya. And to Manjughosha, the supreme heirs of the unequaled teacher, the Buddha. Having assumed the burden of all the conqueror's teachings, they emanate in innumerable Buddha realms. I bow to the feet of Nagarjuna and Asanga, thoroughly renowned throughout the three levels, ornaments of Jambuvipa, who wrote exact commentaries on the intent of the mother of the conquerors, so difficult to fathom. I bow to Dipamkara, Atisha, bearer of the treasury of instructions that comprise the key points unmistaken and complete of the paths of the profound view and vast deeds, transmitted well by those great trailblazers, two great trailblazers. I bow with respect to the teachers who, with deeds of skill and means, moved by loving concern, illuminate for the fortunate the gateway leading to liberation, the eye for viewing all limitless scriptures. Nowadays, those making effort at yoga have studied few of the classic texts, while those who have studied much are not skilled in the key points of practice. They tend to view the scriptures through the eyes of partisanship, unable to use the reason to discriminate the meaning of the scriptures. Therefore, having seen that they lack the path pleasing to the wise, the supreme complete instructions, the key points of the teaching, I was inspired to explain this path of the great trailblazers, all those fortunate ones who are unobscured by the darkness of partisanship, who have the mental capacity to differentiate good and bad, and who wish to make meaningful this good life and leisure, should listen with one-pointed attention. Now we'll recite the Heart Sutra. We'll do it in English. The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the Samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination, and at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice a profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice a profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way, seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness. Emptiness also is form. Emptiness is no other than form. Form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I dhatu up to no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times by means of prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth, since there is no deception. Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way: Deyata om gate gate paragate parasangate bodhi soha. Thus Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita, just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Ngala jube nijo damba ne ngushe duchu ngai dudo jendru babala mai bushinzi nizong gandro so la shatze lo aga samara chandara samara aga samara chandara. Aga samara chandara samara vede atong gate gate paragate parasangate buddhiso papa gochison chikai tembiduji lobodoji mebodoji shewadoji dagi baji medu vishadanji denkorizo ngerendo jaji jewada medun vejandandra wada domba junjin bunzon zonjoji dashi de janden da de lejo. Make a perfect mandala offering, this perfect universe, perfect beings. So fortunate, as a request for teaching and imagining the whole lineage all the way back. I'm talking, but what I'm talking about is what Rinpoche was talking about, and which His Holiness is talking about, and Geshe Dorje Damdu and Geshe Lobsang Gompo is talking about. And what they're talking about was what Trijung Rinpoche was talking about, and Ling Rinpoche was talking about, and Zong Rinpoche was talking about, and Khensur Pema Jetsun was talking about, and Shakar Gen Nima was talking about, and Gen Uzer was talking about, and Gen Lajap was talking about, and so on and so forth. And Pabunka Rinpoche was talking about, keep it going, and Dabo Rinpoche was talking about. So we see that this pure lineage goes all the way back through these incredible, incredible beings that were so kind to come into our world and spend so much time and energy to know the meaning of these texts and be able to elucidate them in a way that we can understand them. Because if we just try to read the sutras, we're going to be in a lot of trouble if we don't have these unless we're super high scope. Some folks are super high scope. But I'm not. I need so many commentaries of commentaries, and with these pieces of the puzzle, that are so much bigger when you look at commentaries, like the 10,000 piece puzzle of the sutras. Each piece is maybe like this big, and you're trying to figure out how to put it together. But when you get to some of these other beautiful commentaries, they're large pieces that you can see exactly how they fit together. And you can make that same exact beautiful picture eventually that the sutra makes by having a little bit more to work with because of the kindness of these masters. So let's make an offering of a perfect universe to them and say, hey, thank you. Please give me, not the thank yous at the end, but here's, please, I request this teaching, but it's also thank you because I can request this teaching in there. So there's gratitude involved. Fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Sanje Jadan Zoji Janan La Janju Badu Dani Jazuji Dagi Juje Jibe Zonanje Drola Benje Sanje Drubasho Sanje Jadan Zoji Janan La Janju Badu Dani Jazuji Dagi Juje Jibe Zonanje Drola Benje Sanje Drubasho Sanje Jadan Zoji Janan La Janju Badu Dani Jazuji Dagi Juje Jibe Zonanje Drola Benje Sanje Drubasho. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. From Nagarjuna's Mulya Madhyamika Karika. And then from Dignaga's Pramana Samuchaya, we'll make a praise to Buddha Shakyamunis, the one who's transformed into a reliable guide, motivated by altruism to benefit sentient beings, the teacher, Sugata, and protector. To you, I make prostrations. Sachen Konga Nipo's departing from the four attachments. If you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, there is no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. May this teaching be heard and understood in the language of all sentient beings, as it says in the Sanjamala. Hey, everybody. So nice to see all of you again, as it always is. Looking at this incredible poem, the more and more I look at it, and the more I look at it in relation to the Lamrim Chemo and the Ngarim Chemo, it's just so incredible that we have such clear teachings to go by, and we don't have to guess. We don't have to try to, come up with what we think this may be or this may not be. We don't have to guess. We have these great teachings, these great commentaries to lead us through, to understand how one would go through the various stages that are necessary to become a Buddha. And we see in the teachings for beings of three capacities, it shows us how we, in the teachings shared in common with beings of small and medium capacity, give up attachment to this life, become a spiritual practitioner, and then give up attachment to samsara and get renunciation. And then if we just definitely want to get out of samsara, then we're going to need to engage in practices that will allow us to get out of samsara. And we find the three highest higher trainings presented so clearly in the teachings shared in common with beings of medium capacity. And then the only entrance into the Mahayana being bodhicitta, the only door that gets us into the Mahayana, that gets us into that pathway that leads to not only fearlessness that a Hinayana foe destroyer would have, but the infinite happiness, the bliss of the Buddha has, the omniscience that the Buddha has, the reliability that the Buddha has. And then if we are able to practice these things, then we can go through the paths that are presented in the Heart Sutra, the Teata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhisoha. We can go through the path of accumulation when we generate the mind that aspires to enlightenment and enter that door of the Mahayana, and then eventually go through the practices where we get, an inferential valid cognition of emptiness that's, combined, our special insight is combined with shamatha or shine, where we're able to, really, really infer it and know it beyond a shadow of a doubt, this emptiness, and then eventually see it directly at the path of seeing as bodhisattvas, and then be on the first bodhisattva ground in the path of accumulation and the path of meditation, and then take the path of meditation through all of the 10 bodhisattva grounds to the point where we go through the impure grounds, get rid of the afflictive obstructions, and then work on those last pure grounds, getting rid of the obstructions to omniscience. So not an easy feat, but luckily we have a roadmap. We don't have to rely, we have good GPS. We just have to write into the, okay, put the aspiration out there. We want to get to Buddhahood. put that in the GPS and all we're going to get, there's never anything else that we would get from the Buddha than the stages of the path to enlightenment. So it's pretty neat to know that. And it's neat that we have this small commentary by Pabunka Rinpoche that shows us a little bit how to look at the source of all my good, the Lama Tsongkhapa's Yuntun Chijuma, how to look at the foundation of all good qualities, how to divide it into 4 categories, how to first see that just having that teacher, seeing the teacher as the root of everything, is its own category, because it becomes so important at the beginning to really know how to practice and what is good for us and what we need within our capacity to do as a practitioner. But then we see it indispensable when we get to the higher stages of Tantrayana. Because what did Manjushri say first and foremost? He had to see the Lama as inseparable from the Yidam. And that's Tantra talk. That's not teaching shared in common with beings of small capacity talk, really, a little bit. But where you're seeing the teacher is inseparable from the Yidam, and you're developing that relationship in that way, where you're not just seeing the teacher like me, like some guy giving a Dharma talk, or there's some teacher giving a Dharma talk, and you're not just seeing it as an Arya being who's in the merit field. You're seeing your teacher as inseparable from the Buddha. So you see how the first category, the source of all my good, is my kind Lama, my Lord. It's the first thing, and Pabunka Rinpoche gives it its own category because that relationship becomes so important. And especially as you start to have to navigate emptiness, and whether or not your calm abiding is really calm abiding, as you're, trying to get through the stages of shamatha, and am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? Am I holding it too tightly? Am I holding it too loosely? The object of observation, is my object of observation correct? The teacher becomes more and more important to be able to kind of look at those subtleties, but then of utmost importance in terms of reliability and in terms of visualizations and so forth. So the first category, relying on the teacher. So I'm just going to read through it quickly, as we always do, because I think that there's no reason not to. So the source of all my good is my kind Lama, my Lord. Bless me first to see that taking myself to him in the proper way is the very root of the path, and grant me then to serve and follow him with all my strength and reverence. So we see how this relationship builds, and this relationship, this person that you choose as a teacher, you don't just choose blindly. You see that they say many, many years go into investigating whether a teacher is qualified or not. And you check it with the qualifications that are found in the Lamrim. And you don't just blindly throw yourself into a teacher-student relationship. You can go hear a lecture, but make sure that if you're going to hear a lecture, the person has qualifications to give the lecture. A lot of people are giving lectures. A lot of people are talking about a lot of things. Be a smart person, have Google, find out what the qualifications are, even to hear a lecture. I wouldn't just waste your time going to hear just anybody talk about anything. We have a precious human life, and we don't know when we're going to die. And if we need information for the time of death and for our next lives, then we better make sure the information that we're getting is accurate, and that it's from a qualified source. So this section, which Pabunka gives its own category, is so important. And the next category is what you do next. Okay, now you have a teacher. What you should do next? Take the essence of this life. And how do you take the essence of this life? It's by practicing the teachings shared in common with beings of small and medium capacity that will lead you into the teachings for beings of great capacity. So bless me first to realize that this excellent life of leisure I found just this once is ever so hard to find and ever so valuable. Grant me then to wish and never stop to wish that I could take its essence night and day. Now we get into the small scope. My body and the life in it are fleeting as the bubbles in the sea froth of a wave. Bless me first thus to recall the death that will destroy me soon, and help me find sure knowledge that after I've died, the things I've done, the white or black, and what those deeds will bring to me, follow always close behind, as certain as my shadow. Grant me then to be careful, stop the slightest wrongs of the many wrongs we do, and try to carry out instead each and every good of the many that we may. Bless me to perceive all that's wrong with the seemingly good things of this life. I can never get enough of them. They cannot be trusted. They are the door to every pain I have. Grant me then to strive instead for the happiness of freedom. Grant that these pure thoughts may lead me to be watchful and to recall what I should be doing. Grant me to give the greatest care to make the vows of morality the essence of my practice. They are the root of Buddha's teachings. I have slipped and fallen into the sea of the suffering life. Bless me to see that every living being, everyone my own mother, has fallen into, Grant me then to practice the wish for enlightenment, to take on myself the task of freeing them all. So here is where we left off last time. We talked about, this is the stanza for aspiring bodhicitta. So we know that aspiring bodhicitta has various causes and conditions and powers. When we look at Panchen Sonandrapa's general meaning of perfection, we find that bodhicitta itself is divided into those 5 categories of basis, cause, nature, divisions, and benefits. So we find these 5 categories, and we know we have the basis because we're from which we can get aspiring bodhicitta. So how do we get aspiring bodhicitta? We get it through the 2 different causal factors. The causal factor that's passed down from Maitreya to Asanga, called the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, that we would say is for those dull practitioners. Just it doesn't mean anything that much. But it's for a more dull person, that type of practice. And then the equalizing, exchanging self with others practice, passed down in the profound view lineage from Buddha Shakyamuni to Manjushri and Nagarjuna. And that would be for sharp practitioners, sharp bodhisattvas, sharp practitioners to generate. And we see in the equalizing, exchanging self with others practice how emptiness comes into play right away in that first step of recognizing the importance. You're equally as important as I am. I can't establish myself. I can't establish other. We go right into emptiness, right at the beginning of the equalizing, exchanging self with others practice. So you see how that could be for sharper kind of capacity folks. But there's other commentaries that say the opposite. So don't become fixed on this idea. And there's a way to combine them both. But most of the main Lamrim scholars would say that the 7-point cause and effect really gives you a good foundation to start to do the equalizing, exchanging self with others practice from. Not that you couldn't just do the one, the sharp one, but really, if you have a good overview, then you'll know how to practice them both. And once you get more and more invested in your need to generate bodhicitta, you'll see how emptiness plays its role in compassion, and seeing how, well, recognizing that I'm really at the most subtle level, renouncing my grasping at, this grasping at I and phenomena as being truly established, the self of person and phenomena as being truly established, that's causing all of my problems, that's causing my 8 sufferings, 6 sufferings, and 3 sufferings. And wow, I have compassion for you because you've got that going on too. You have that problem just like me. So we see the importance of the emptiness as we get closer and closer to compassion. And when we look at the levels of compassion, and we look at it in the Umagomba Rabsel in Illuminating the Intent by Lama Tsongkhapa, we see the different levels of compassion. Compassion that sees sentient beings suffering, compassion that sees impermanent sentient beings, and compassion that sees sentient beings that are empty of inherent existence. And we find in Chandrakirti's entrance to the middle way that quote that corresponds to it. So next we get into the Bodhisattva vows and actually the 3 moralities. So we're running out of time somewhat. I'm not going to go on too long tonight. I'm going to try to keep it to end on time. But what I want to do is say, we went over the aspiring bodhicitta, and we know we have these 2 ways to get aspiring bodhicitta. And we know that we can combine those 2 lineages into 13 steps, to get the aspiring bodhicitta, how we can take the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment and mash it up with equalizing, exchanging self with others. We went over that last time by, recognizing all, having equanimity, recognizing all sentient beings as our mother, remembering their kindness, wishing to repay their kindness, recognizing all beings are as important as I, the downfalls of the self-cherishing attitude, the benefits of cherishing others, giving and taking by means of love and compassion, the actual switch of the attitude where we put others' needs before our own, remembering the great kindness of all sentient beings, and then having that pure intention, that desire to say, I'll take it on myself, I'm going to do it. The task of freeing them all, that extraordinary attitude that's sometimes called altruism, and then the recognition that we can't do it yet and we must become a Buddha, that result of bodhicitta that occurs from combining those or from doing them on their own, because both of those practices end with an extraordinary attitude that says, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take it upon myself to bring sentient beings to a state of happiness where they're free from suffering. And then the recognition that I've made this commitment that I can't fulfill unless I'm a Buddha, because beings, I can't give them any realizations. I can't wash away negativities. Neither can the Buddha. I can only, teach. I can only teach them exactly what they need to know to free themselves. And if I'm a Buddha, then I'll know what they need to know. And right now, I don't know what they need to know. So even though I have this great attitude, this great idea that I want to, free them all, I'm incapacitated myself. I have the afflictive obstructions, the obstructions to omniscience, and I can't bring someone somewhere I haven't been. And I don't know exactly how they need to get there. There's a lot of ways to get from our house right here to New York City, depending on traffic, depending on different things that could have happened, accidents. You can go on Waze to look and it'll tell you all these different pathways to go, but then maybe you go onto this one, but then everyone else went onto that one. So it's going to take longer. So you really need to know the exact fastest route for you, your personal fastest route. And the Buddha is really the only one who can give you that your personal fastest route that won't have any hindrances that maybe an algorithm didn't see coming, or that a really, really smart person didn't see coming. They'll be able to see exactly what you need. And that's the difference between someone who's, even on the high bodhisattva grounds, who's super reliable, but not completely reliable. Can do emanations, can clairvoyance, can walk through walls, but not completely reliable, not reliable enough. And Buddha is the only one who's reliable enough. So we say at that step of the extraordinary attitude, whether we're doing the combination, doing the singular 7-point cause and effect, or the singular equalizing, exchanging self with others, practice that extraordinary attitude that says, I'll take it upon myself, the task of freeing them all, is the same kind of result that comes about through this buildup of practice of love and compassion and so forth, that then says, I got to become a Buddha if I'm going to do that. So Pabunka Rinpoche says some stuff, and this is many, many times misinterpreted when we look at commentaries, many times, because it says the three moralities. So everyone jumps right to, oh, they must be talking about individual liberation vow, bodhisattva vow, and tantric vow. But we're not. We're in a section where we wouldn't be talking about tantric vow yet. We're not in that section yet. Not that it doesn't encompass it into this, what the three moralities are, but you'll get the point in a second. I'll read you Pabunka's commentary, but it's beautiful to know what this means, because the bodhisattva vow is in here. This is engaged bodhicitta, the engaged bodhisattva vow, but it's put in a little bit of a different way, and I think it's important to know what it means. So it says, suppose you're able, as described above, to achieve the wish for enlightenment. So aspiring bodhicitta. Pabunka says, okay, so now imagine if you've pulled this off, because we know in Panchen Sunandrapa's general meaning of perfection that it says you have to have aspiring bodhicitta to get a bodhisattva vow. It's one of the mental bases. You have to be on the path of accumulation of the Mahayana to actually receive a bodhisattva vow. And then usually you go from the small level of the path of accumulation to the medium level of the path of accumulation. Once you're a bodhisattva, take the bodhisattva vow and begin practicing the 6 perfections. And there's no going back, they say, from there. You're not going to become not a bodhisattva again, but you could at the smallest level. Like if you had gotten the wish to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, you could unwish it still for a short period of time. There's a window, there's a window of potential loss there. So it's saying, suppose you've achieved now this wish to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. That's day and night there. Just like in the 3 principal paths, Lamsam Namsam, when Lama Tsongkhapa defines renunciation, it says day and night, seeking transcendent liberation. It talks about day and night. Your day and night want to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Say you have this, and you want to achieve this state in order to help every living being. Okay, so now you're there. You're this being that has just decided day and night, I'm just going to help every living being. I'm putting their needs before my own, And that's how I'm going to achieve fearlessness and bliss. And that's how, once I achieve that, how I'm going to get them there the quickest way, because I'll know how to do it. I'll know how to really help them. I'm going to help them in the meantime to the best of my ability, because I love them all. I care about them all. I love them as much as my most dear loved one. But I know I'm not going to help them as best I could. So I got to keep moving to Buddhahood in order to help every living being. This itself is not enough. Whoa. So just this wish itself is not enough, it says. The wish itself is not enough. If I'm not trained in the three moralities, I can't become a Buddha. So just wishing to become a Buddha, if you haven't engaged, if you're not actively engaging, you're just wishing. It's like Shantideva says, it's like wishing to go somewhere and then actually going somewhere. Here you're just still wishing, but Shantideva says now, and Kamalashila says that the engagement bodhicitta is when you take the bodhisattva vow, when you go from the state of wishing to go somewhere to actually going on the journey. So it says, once you do reach the wish, you still take on the vows of these bodhisattva princes and princesses, these sons and daughters of the victorious Buddhas, and then you must train yourself in giving and the other 5 perfections. Otherwise, there's no way you could ever come to enlightenment. So it's saying that now it's time to do the bodhisattva's work. You don't just wish, oh, I want to do it. I want to free you all. Now it's time to get to work, get to the work of freeing and working on freeing until you can actually really free. It's funny how, you perfect your generosity doesn't mean that everyone is free of poverty. It means you've perfected your relationship with generosity and then can perfectly give to others perfectly, and all of them in an unbiased way. You've perfected that state within you. You can't make it higher. You won't have any barrier to giving. You have no appearances, and Buddha doesn't see any appearances any longer that fool him or her. They see them as they are ultimately, and see what they're concealing, see the concealment. So you must still take the vows of and then you must train yourself in giving and the other 5 perfections. Otherwise, there's no way to ever come to enlightenment. This fact explains why it's so important when holy beings have said that all 6 perfections are covered in the 3 types of morality. The first type of morality is the morality of keeping oneself from committing wrong. Here you begin by being extremely careful to keep the morality of avoiding the 10 mad deeds. This type of good behavior is common to everyone, whether they wear the robes or not, and must absolutely be maintained. So you see, even no matter what, whether you're in the tantric vehicle or the perfection vehicle of the Mahayana or in the Hinayana vehicle, the 10 non-virtues have to be abstained from if you want to achieve the goals of those vehicles. So it says, and this is the basis of all of it. So it says more specifically, with the first type of morality, you must in addition exert yourself to the fullest so to assure that your life is never sullied in the least by overstepping the bounds of any of the vows you have agreed to keep. So now we're talking about bodhisattva vows and any other vows you've agreed to keep. Here we refer to vows that belong to any of the 3 traditional sets, the freedom vows, bodhisattva vows, and the secret tantric vows. So you see, this type of morality, the first type of morality, contains the 3 moralities that people often get wrong and think, oh, there's 3 moralities are referring to individual liberation, bodhisattva vows, and tantric vows. Whereas no, the first morality encompasses those. And then there's other moralities of the bodhisattva. Yes, the bodhisattva vow and the 6 perfections are these engaged activities. But then it says the second type of morality is known as the morality of collecting goodness. This is where you use a great variety of means to gather or collect extremely potent stores of virtue into your being. These are the virtues of amassing merit and amassing wisdom. Okay, so the morality, this is a type of morality, this keeping going. And then there's a footnote. Let's read it. It's good. I know we're running out of time, but so it says, these 2 huge collections of good deeds and knowledge within one's mind stream act as the causes for the physical form and the omniscient state of a Buddha, respectively. And you see it in Pabunka Rinpoche's commentary on Lama Tsongkhapa's three principal paths. So we see this point that's being made about amassing. We need the collection of merit and wisdom to have the bodies of a Buddha. Then the third type of morality is a morality that acts for every sentient being. Here you take care to keep the different varieties of morality mentioned above that involve restraining yourself from wrong, but instead of doing it so with a motivation which is infected with any self-interest, you act only out of an intention to reach total Buddhahood for the sake of every living kind, every living being. So everything you're doing throughout your day is only to become a Buddha. All these moralities, everything that you're doing, when you're trying to take care of sentient beings, you're amassing the collections, you're doing it only to become a Buddha. You must find a sure knowledge of where you are. You must find a sure kind of knowledge where you see clearly how if you lack fluency in the three types of morality, if you're not well trained in them and completely accustomed to following them, then you cannot become one of those who has reached the fully enlightened state of a Buddha. Once you have found this knowledge, you must take on the vows for the children of the victors, that is the Bodhisattva vows, and then with a resolve of fierce intensity, you must learn and master the three types of morality. What we are requesting of our Lama here, said our Lama, is that he or she grant us the ability to do so. I'll end there. And we'll go into the Bodhisattva vows in proper next week. We'll read through them. I have them in front of me, but we're out of time. So I want to read one short prayer for the flourishing of Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings. The Nejong Oracle said this is a good prayer to read. Other centers read this prayer. It's short. So I just want to read this right at the end of the teaching right now. And then we'll get on with the rest of our business of doing concluding prayers and so forth. Though he is the father, so this is called the Lozang Jeltenma. It's a prayer for the flourishing of Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings. Though he's the father, producer of all conquerors, as a conqueror's son, he produced the thought of upholding the conqueror's Dharma in infinite worlds. Through this truth, may the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. When you were in the presence of the Buddha Indraketa, he made his vow, the conqueror and his offspring, praised his powerful courage. Through this truth, may the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. That the lineage of pure view and conduct might spread, he offered a white crystal rosary to the sage, who gave him a conch and prophesied, through this truth, may the conqueror's Lozang's teachings flourish. His pure view, free of eternity or destruction, his pure meditation cleansed of dark fading and fog, his pure conduct practiced according to the conqueror's orders, may the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. Learned, since he extensively sought out learning, reverend, rightly applying it to himself, good, dedicating all for beings and doctrine, may the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. Through being pure, being sure that all scriptures, definitive and interpretive, were without contradiction, advice for one person's practice, he stopped all misconduct. May the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. Listening to the explanations of the three Pitakas, realized teachings, practice of the three higher trainings, his skilled and accomplished life story is amazing. May the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. Outwardly calm and subdued by the hearer's conduct, inwardly trusting in the two stages of practice, he allied without clash the good paths of Sutra and Tantra. May the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. Combining voidness and explaining as the causal vehicle with great bliss achieved by method and effect vehicle, heart essence of 80,000 Dharma bundles, may the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. By the power of the ocean of oath-bound doctrine protectors, like the main guardians of the three beings' paths, the quick-acting Lord, Vaishravana, Karmayana, may the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. In short, by the lasting of the glorious Guru's lives, by the earth being full of good, learned, reverend holders of the teaching, and by the increase of power of its patrons, may the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. If you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, there is no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. Make a mandala offering, a Thanksgiving mandala offering for this teaching, this incredible fact that we can hear these words It's unbelievable to me. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I've collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Zandrapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Any mistakes that I've made, may they be erased. I apologize. I confess them now. May they be erased from your minds. Imagine that Bodhisattva, who's inseparable from Khensur Geshe Wangdak, is in the space in front of you. That white light rays and nectars turn into white ohms and transform your impure body into pure body. Red light rays and nectars come down and transform into red ohms, going into your throat and purifying your speech. And blue light rays and nectars transform into blue ohms, go into your hearts and purify your minds. So any mistakes that I've made, may they be purified from this mantra of Vajrasattva, who's inseparable from Khensur Geshe Wangdak. Om Benza Sato Samaya Manubalaya Benza Sato Zeno Vajista Dida Me Baba Sutokaya Me Baba Subokaya Me Baba Anurakta Me Baba Savasiri Me Brata Savakama Sucha Me Kitam Shriyam Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Savatata Gata Benza Mame Moka Benza Baba Mahasamaya Sapa A Om Ve. May we always be protected by Paul the Lamo. Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Rama Tunja Kala Raja Mo Rama Vachidacha Tunja Rulu Hong Jo Hong Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Tunja Kala Raja Mo Rama Vachidacha Tunja Rulu Hong Jo Hong Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Tunja Kala Raja Mo Rama Vachidacha Tunja Rulu Hong Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Tunja Kala Raja Mo Rama Vachidacha Tunja Rulu Hong Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Tunja Kala Raja Mo Rama Vachidacha Tunja Rulu Hong Jo Hong Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Tunja Kala Raja Mo Rama Vachidacha Tunja Rulu Jo Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Dunjo Kala Raja Mo Rama Vachadacha Tunjo Rulu Hunjo. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. And pray for the long life of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. In the pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso, may you remain until samsara's end. Ganri Rawe Gorwe Jinjandi Vendan Dewa Malu Jongwe Genrezi Wandenzin Yatsoi Jabezi de Badu Den Yodi. Pray for our prayer to Khensur Geshe Wangdak. A complex yogi poses as a simple monk. Homage to Khensur Geshe Wangdak Rinpoche, our precious spiritual friend who is inseparable from Aryatara. I fully prostrate, covering as many atoms of the earth as possible to your pure body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. I offer to you drinking water, bathing water, flowers, incense, candles, scented water, food, and music, purified by Om Ah Om. The rarity of having 1 million wish-fulfilling gems is a common occurrence compared to meeting with a holy teacher like you, who placed the complete path to Buddhahood in our childlike hands. Just like Atisha, who came to Tibet with a lamp to dispel the darkness of ignorance, you, kind abbot, arrived in the West with a lineage purer than a diamond and begged us never to be satisfied with partial instructions. The teachings of the extensive deeds and profound view lineages flowed from your lips like nectar for our ears that elucidated the teachings for beings of 3 capacities. Now the sound has stopped. All composite things are impermanent. You told us that all of your teachers passed away and understood this sadness, entreating us to continue our studies. The Buddha does not wash away the negativities of beings, nor does he remove their miseries by his hands. His spiritual realizations are not transferred to them. It is by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. We are not prepared to take this difficult journey to the highest goodness of Buddhahood without your continued guidance. The sadness in our hearts would be too overwhelming. May you swiftly return to this world and take care of us in all of our lives, wherever we may be, never leaving our hearts and crowns. May all sentient beings perfectly realize renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness so they know who you really are. May I always, just like Jitsun Milarepa, remember my kind guru. At the beginning of all of Milarepa's songs, he would always say homage to Lotsawa Marpa, homage to my precious guru. He never forgot his guru in anything that he ever wrote. And may I never, ever forget the kindness of Khensur Geshe Wangdak. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll see you on Sunday, and we'll do more Lam Rim, and we'll do more medicine. We'll take some more medicine. Have a great week. Thanks again for listening.